Hi, I'm Keegan. This is a bunch of gamers taking a little break from politics and from gaming, and I am rejoined by Travis Legge, who I will definitely spell his name correctly this time on the thumbnail,
I
lest I
appreciate
get the
that.
wrath of Matthew Dawkins in my comments section. But
I
welcome
appreciate
back.
that. That's just karma for all the times that I've had to correct somebody who called him Matt.
Fair enough. Yes.
Yeah,
And
we're just
I
there's
looked
always
at your name
making
as I
sure.
typed it too. I looked at your name, and for
Yes.
some reason,
It is a common mistake, and probably the most common spelling mistake about my last name, which is preferable to all the weird pronunciation mistakes that my last name gets. Um,
fair. But
Somebody once thought it was pronounced Lachey. They asked me if I was related to the dude from 98 Degrees or whatever band, Nick Lachey. I was like, no, there's nothing like we start with the same letter. That's really about it. Yeah,
incredible.
that's
Uh, but we're here to talk about Scarred Lands in Savage Worlds.
yes, yes. I am very pleased, very excited. I've been a fan of Scarred Lands since there's been a Scarred Lands. It was a real treat to get to work on the 5e stuff for Onyx Path. But now, yeah, I've licensed the property through my company, Aegis Studios. We have the exclusive license to make Savage Worlds properties using the Scarlands IP, which is super cool. I love it.
I bet. So, for those who might not be familiar, could you give them a quick primer on what Scarred Lands is, where it came from, maybe?
Sure, yeah. So, Scarred Lands is a setting in which there has been a recent Titanomachy. It's a post apocalyptic fantasy setting within living memory, about 150 years prior to the game's start. There was a massive war between the gods and the Titans ended. And that war really scarred, hence the name, the countryside, particularly in the continent of Gelspad, but really all across the world. Um, because the Titans couldn't be killed, mostly they were able to be uh, dismembered or imprisoned, but not truly killed. So, for example, on the eastern coast of Gelspad is a body of water known as the Blood Sea, so called because the Titan Kadum lies at the bottom of that sea still, chained up with bleeding out from the hole where the gods ripped his heart out. And so much blood is now seeped into that ocean that it's turned it into a literal sea of blood. Um, the initial releases that we've done story wise for the Savage Worlds setting are set in a region known as the Fangs Fall Peninsula, which is so named because when the Titan Garak, the glutton, was being destroyed, they pulled his teeth out, and as they discarded those teeth, they fell uh, on the ground, basically creating the mountains, the mountain range that's on the Titans, the Fangs Fall Peninsula. So that's these set pieces, or there's these huge regions of the world that are literally Titanic corpses, or littered with the remnants of Titanic corpses that you get to play in and explore, and so that affects the actual environment. Aside from just kind of being like a cool set piece, there are weather concerns. There are ways that it mutates animals, things like that. So it's a really kind of cool, unique post-apocalyptic fantasy setting.
Yeah, and I actually have a couple of the old 3.0 PDFs
Nice.
somewhere. And so I guess that leads into my first kind of talking point question, I guess, maybe discussion, is I've always thought that a game system helps really put shine a light on specific themes of a setting more so than others. So like 3.0, 3.5 was kind of attempting, at least initially, to be more of a simulationist fantasy style game, similar in the veins of like old AD&D, and then that obviously started to kind of evolve. And then 5e definitely tried to compress everyone's old systems to try and create kind of a more story based system using D20. What and those like so 3.5 Scarred Lands definitely is catered more to like living in this sort of scarred Titan world, and then 5e more about the stories you can tell, the heroes and the adventures in it. What do you think Savage Worlds shines a light on with its system for Scarred Lands?
Sure. So the cool thing about the Savage World system, two cool things about the Savage World system that I think really lend themselves well to the Scarred Lands. One is that there are character types called wild cards. Player characters are considered wild cards, and generally, the boss monster is considered a wild card. Right? They have some extra health. They have some extra abilities. They get to roll dice a little bit differently, and it marks them as being kind of like an extra threat. Savage Worlds has a series of setting rules. These are things that you can add or take away to customize your experience when you're running the game. I created a new setting world. Basically, everything is wild. Not that literally every monster you face is ever going to be a wild card, but it gives express permission to the game master and encourages the game master to sort of just randomly drop wild cards in the middle of a combat. So, you might fight 4 goblins, but one of them just happens to be a wild card. To make things a little bit more predictable, a little bit more dangerous, and to sort of give the idea of the setting that you never quite know what you're up against. Everything might have that little extra touch of Titanic taint that pushes it over the edge and makes it a little bit more formidable. The other thing that I think is very cool for Savage Worlds with the Scarlands world is that it's not tied to a strict level progression the way that Dungeons and Dragons is. So it allows you to take these various kind of cool setting elements that we're putting together and actually like construct a character relatively early on that has the story elements, I guess, that you're looking for your character, rather than, especially in like 3.5. If you look at the 3.5 Scarlands materials, there's all these really, really cool prestige classes, but you've got to be like 7th or 8th level before you even join a prestige class. And then you have to, get a couple levels in that before you actually are getting any of the actual benefit of being part of that prestige class. Whereas, you can, the way that the advances work in Savage Worlds, you can start speccing out like a professional path really, really early on. Even like at character creation, you can be like, oh, I want this, this, and this right away off the top to kind of build that base for that character type. And then by buying the appropriate edges or powers or whatever it is as you are advancing, you can really sort of craft a character that fits the mold narratively of what those prestige classes would be way earlier in the play life. And I'm also like, especially as I get older, I become less and less enamored with the idea of starting a campaign where people are highly advanced. Like, I know a lot of people might be like, well, just start your campaign at 12th level in 3.5. In my experience, that's never good. People never know what their character can do. There's always, a little bit of head scratching after every combat where they're like, oh, wait, I forgot I had this power, da da da, because they never earned it at the table, so they never learned when it was important to use,
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial to have a system where you have that customization up front, because then you can have a real mastery of your abilities. And not that I'll be real with you, system mastery is one of the least important things to me personally at the table. Like, I don't care that much. But I know a lot of people really enjoy that aspect of play, and it's much easier to manage with Savage Worlds.
Yeah, no, I think I'd prefer that anyway. How I've always described it is the reason I've kind of fallen out of 5e D&D and Pathfinder, first and second edition, quite a bit is because the two games, one is specking out your character into the future and thinking of all the cool combinations, and the other one is actually playing the game. And that and that's just
Yeah.
is lower on my priority list at this stage in my life. I've got too many gray hairs to think about that. Though no shade to those who like it. I mean, it's just a
Oh yeah,
different way
never.
of playing. But
Yeah, never let it feel like I'm trying to slap the dice out of somebody else's hand.
oh
But
yeah,
it's not what I enjoy
Yeah,
at
not
all.
my preference. I get it. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
had two things. Is I do like that wild card thing because I think you mentioned, you touched on it briefly, is using the wild card mechanic to maybe play up when something is mutated by the Titans, as you put it, and maybe using that as a story beat where, as you get close to a point of interest, there's more wild card creatures, sort of thing, to kind of use
Absolutely.
that narratively. And then the other one is creating characters more tailored to the location and more specifically, like actually tailored to a kind of backstory rather than the backstory just giving you a couple skills.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like one of the things we've got set up. So our current release cadence is we started out with the Gauntlet of Spirogos, which is it's an adventure. I like to refer to it as an enhanced jumpstart, because most of the time when you get a jumpstart, you'll have like a session's worth of adventure and then some pre-generated characters and maybe an extra setting rule or two that are pertinent to the setting. In Gauntlet of Spirogos, you get all of the setting rules that we will be using in the player's guide. They're all in Gauntlet. You get 6 ready-made characters that you can drop right in and play. I've even gone through and broken out the recommended advances for those characters. So if because you have an opportunity to advance 5 times throughout the story. So because it's not just one session worth of adventure, it's the entire Gauntlet of Spirogos, which is you could probably do in 4 or 5 sessions. I've never seen it done in less than 3 without somebody skipping a bunch of stuff. you know, so you've got those additional advancement opportunities, and I've got it set up in there. So if you're coming to Savage Worlds for the first time, all you need is Gauntlet and the Savage Worlds core book, because it even tells you like how to spend your advances, like what you get for each advance. You just add that to the ready-made character, boom, you're ready to go. It includes all the languages, the setting rules, the playable ancestries that those characters are comprised of, and then a list of culture packages, which are another thing that you can use. It's similar to what they have in Savage Pathfinder, actually, where you have basically like if you're familiar with D&D, like a background, and that will give you some additional abilities as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just had it. Give me one moment. I had a question and it just kind of shot out of my head like nobody's
That's fine. What?
business.
Well, while you're working on it, you can tell me to shut up if you think of it. But I can also just say that, yeah, with Gauntlet, you've got it's self-contained. The only thing that you need aside from the actual Gauntlet of Spirogos is the actual Savage Worlds rules from Pinnacle, and the version. It's now in POD and PDF, and it's 72 pages. It's not a tiny little adventure.
That is cool. Yeah, no, it's gone. Yeah. Who
Yeah,
knows where? But
I'm sure it'll come back 10 minutes after we're off the call.
yeah, always, right? No, so with that then, what do you think are some of the more are what are you playing with, I guess, with the Savage World systems that you may not have been able to do so much with like the 5e version of the game? Like what are some aspects of the setting you're really looking forward to writing and sinking your teeth into, that you think the Savage World system will really enhance?
Well, I think like a couple things. One, we are the structure of that Savage Worlds players are used to and game masters are used to is a little different, less rigid. Would be one way of putting it than sort of your traditional fantasy dungeon crawly adventures, right? They're designed to be a lot more narrative driven, and they're designed to be a lot more. They call them plot point campaigns is a common thing in there, or one sheet adventures where you have like here are your high points of drama, and it's up to the GM sort of how to stitch them together. Gauntlet of Spirogos is absolutely not that. It is very much got the DNA of the dungeon crawl in it, which I think is fine. But I am looking forward to experimenting more with the sort of traditional Savage Worlds adventure format. It's one of the things that we're doing kind of with our I'm doing the Scarred Lands creature profiles. so that way, because there is a bit of a gap between the bigger releases. The Gauntlet of Spyrgos just came out in print on demand this week, but had been released in advanced PDF 2 months ago. And then the next adventure in the series, the Dagger Spyrgos, is coming out on the 5th. So 5th or the 6th. I can't remember which. But in between those, we're putting out these Scarlands creature profiles where we take one of the monsters from Scarlands and we do a Savage Worlds write-up with it. And then we add a couple of plot hooks. These are just little, like, 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph little adventure hooks where you can grab them and just drop them in to an existing campaign. You can even play them in a different world. I will say the monster design in Savage Worlds, or in Scarlands, is a highly lethality design, even without the everything's wild kind of house rule. And some of them are wild cards regardless, but so be careful if you're just dropping into your sort of bog standard Savage Worlds fantasy game. Be careful; they might prove a little bit deadlier than you might expect in a Deadlands game or something like that. But it's there; it's an option, and so that's the thing I'm really excited about, is being able to play with that format. And then as we get more releases together, I don't want to give away our whole plan, but a lot of our plan does involve converting the material that exists for 5e and then getting into the meat of the material that never really got an official 5e release that was introduced in 3.5. So I can say, when we do crowdfund the player's guide, rather than it just being like Gelspad adjacent, which is like the main continent the action in 5e takes place in, we're going to be covering all the continents and land masses. So we will have information on Termana. We will have information on the Dragonlands. We will have information on Asherak. We will have information on Fenrilik. Fenrilik, we were able to do for 5e. I did a book with a few friends of mine called Frostlands of Fenrilik, which we were able to put out through the Sluritian Vault community content program. So it's a semi-official 5e version of Fenrilik, the Northern Continent. But this will be the first official version of Fenrilik since 3rd edition. Same with Asherak and Termana and the Dragonlands. So that's super exciting to me to be able to play in those regions that have been thus far kind of overlooked in the latest edition.
That seems like a weird trend that was set by Faerun to some degree, right? Is everyone's world maps seem to have gotten a little smaller since Faerun. They just really focused on the Sword Coast, and then Scarred Lands, at least 5e, only focused on one continent. Just more of an observation than anything else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was not in the room when those decisions were made.
Sure.
I came to Savage Worlds after the initial development sort of issues that happened, and there were some unfortunate tragedies that came along with, like, the Scarred Lands 5e launch. The most important among them was that Stu Wick passed away, like, during the making of the book, which is horrible, but also caused some. Aside from the human tragedy of it, it caused some hitches in the giddy up of the line
Sure.
getting relaunched.
Sure.
And so I think that momentum hiccup carried through a lot of the 5e line, which is a shame because I really love the work that we've done so far in 5e. I'm equally, if not more so, excited to explore it for Savage Worlds, because again, it's just such an exciting system.
Yeah.
It's the amount of stuff that's available if you wanted to have kind of a mixed nuts game, or like I'm going to grab stuff out of Deadlands. I'm going to grab stuff out of. There's a Savage Worlds Rifts now. There's the East Texas University. Their sort of modern horror setting. There's just anything you can imagine. There's a Savage Worlds rule set and world for it. If it's not officially by Pinnacle, there's a third-party publisher doing it. So to be able to have all that stuff on the table for mixing in with Scarred Lands, I think is really cool too. Because again, you can make all sorts of stuff make sense, either with like, oh, this is a Titanic mutation, not a cyborg, but you've got those stats, so you can
Yeah.
reach into all these other sort of different pouches and bring it across, which feels a lot like the old 3.5, right? Because you could grab whatever 3.5 book you wanted to and bring some stuff out, and then drop it at the table.
Yep. Got to
So
drop
I
in that.
like that stuff.
Yeah, you got to drop in that Monty Cook World of Darkness in your scarred scarred lands game.
Exactly. It's funny you mentioned that. I basically did like a 5e port of the um, different character types in Monty Cook's World of Darkness on my Patreon a few years ago,
Uh,
because it's all open game content. So
yeah.
it's like, yeah,
What about? So actually, I was thinking about it. Is you mentioned there's a higher lethality with Scarred Lands and Savage Worlds potentially. How do you square that circle with it being more narratively driven with plot points and things like that when there is maybe more of a risk, since that risk should exist in all games, I think, but there's a higher risk of player character death and how that might affect these sorts of plot point adventures.
well, what I think is interesting about it, especially with the way that the core Savage Worlds runs, taking away any of the stuff that you add with Scarred Lands, is it's designed at its very base. If you're just using the basic rules, it's designed to have very heroic player characters. Most of the things you fight, they get wounded, they drop. Um, so you're really supposed to kind of be a big damn hero walking in the door. Where I think that Savage World, or where I think that the Scarred Lands stuff that we're introducing makes that fun and exciting and challenging, is you can still have that be 80% of your encounters, and then you drop the fear in. And the part of the reason why I decided to go that way with it, with the sort of everything's wild. I know I'm getting that wrong. That setting rule, the name of it, but one of the reasons I threw that in there is so that people don't ever get that sort of player complacency that you'll get sometimes at like a D&D table or at a table that's been playing World of Darkness for 30 years, and you walk out and you start to describe a power and they're like, oh, that's this thing, that's a war ghoul, and it's on page 218 of the player's guide to the Sabbat. Like, well, what the fuck, like, you may know that because you're a lore hound. Your character was embraced last week does not know what that is. Like, so yeah, it's a way to, in a sense, it sort of gets to recapture that little bit of like terror of the unknown.
Yeah, I was gonna say the wonder too of the unknown, right? I think fantasy becoming too known kind of robs it of some of its magic.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think having that sort of element of uncertainty, it's very good. Especially, it's very good for fantasy in general, but it's especially good when you want to have any element of horror in it. And I would say that if that like the second genre to like the primary genre of Scarred Lands is fantasy, but there's a lot of horror mixed into it.
Oh yeah, I remember those old monster codexes,
Yeah, creature
uh,
collections. Funny
creature
story about it.
collections.
The actual first book for Scarred Lands was Creature Collection 1, and it came out prior to the Monster Manual. Because the way that they released the third edition, they put out the Player's Guide, the DMG, and then the SRD, and the Player's Guide had like 50 monsters in the back of it, and all those were in the SRD.
Huh.
And so they saw that, and I think it was Stu Wick, if I remember correctly. I was not there, but I've heard the story. But basically, he was like, "We're going to stop doing everything." Like White Wolf dropped everything they were working on, and we're like, "We are going to beat Wizards of the Coast to market with a monster manual," and that just became their mission in life, and they did it. So they were the first actual monster manual for their edition, which is, I think, really why Scarlet Lands caught on the way it did.
Yeah, that's also deeply funny. Speaking of D&D, this is probably more speculative than anything else, but do you think there's going to be maybe more interest in the Scarred Lands now, especially with the whole D&D 2014 seemingly underperforming, and maybe there being space for new systems to kind of fill in that void.
Let me preface this by saying I do not wish any ill will toward Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
And
100%
gen-
understood.
generally speaking, I do not have any bad feelings for the game. Having said that, though, I think it's great that other opportunities are coming to the forefront. I think it's wonderful that people are willing to try out other games. I would highly recommend it. I and not just Savage Worlds, though. Savage Worlds is a really good game, I think, to get into if you're familiar with D&D. I think that it's a quick pickup. I also think that it's a quick pickup if you're familiar with any of the sort of story path, storyteller, story guide type systems, or what is it? Storyteller, storytelling. Yeah, if you're familiar with any of those systems, I think it's an easy, quick pickup. If you're familiar with like old school Cortex, it's a really quick pickup. Very similar systems. I apologize. There's a plane going overhead. I hope it's not drowning me out.
No, you're good.
Um,
I was hearing those systems like D&D. I'm like, yeah, I've done that. Storyteller, yeah, I've done that. Cortex, I had no idea which one that one is.
oh, it was used. I first encountered it in the Supernatural role playing game. It
Oh,
was Margaret Weiss's house system. Now it was bought. God, it's run by. I think it's run by Fandom or whoever owns Fandom now.
oh,
They used the latest iteration of it was used in the Dragon Prince role playing game,
oh, neat.
actually. Which, if you haven't tried out, it's really fun. I recommend checking. I also recommend watching the Dragon Prince. Great show.
I got through the
Um,
first season, then I got distracted.
I recommend going back and checking it out. It's got I don't know, it's like 6 seasons now, and there's two different
Yeah.
series names. But yeah, it's really good. There was a point to all that. What was my point? Oh, so yeah, like I don't know, and even if I did know, I would not be in a position to speak to what the 2024 plans, if any, are regarding Savage World or regarding Skylands. This was asked of me on the Onyx Path Discord the other day. I can say that nothing's been announced to develop that. I will say personally, stepping away from this has nothing to do with any insight. This has nothing to do. This is not inside baseball. This is Travis's personal opinion. I think that releasing it strictly over through Creative Commons castrates. There's not a better word for it. Castrates the ability for creators to work with it.
Thanks. Interesting.
Yeah, it's awful. First of all, I have not been able to encounter a single person on the internet. Perhaps you can fix this for me. I've not been able to encounter a single person who can explain to me with any actual like knowledge and like ability to cite where it says this in the document and how it works, how I'm supposed to separate intellectual property I own and hold a copyright to from whatever's covered under the Creative Commons. And since that's not crystal fucking clear, I think it's suicide to try to release anything under it. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Just yeah, unless you
I,
don't give a shit about your IP at all, then
yeah.
go for it.
So this is only my bare bones, like, nah, I'm not a lawyer understanding, right?
Sure.
Is you put the Creative Commons legal doc in there, and you basically go, that basically covers all the core rules that are covered by Creative Commons. And then if you insert anything from your book, like specific page numbers or sections, that enters the Creative Commons, and the other parts do not. But that is my very, very stripped down layman's understanding from my friend who is a lawyer, but very clearly told me she is not a copyright lawyer because you need 2 degrees to do practice
Right.
law for copyright, and she only has the one.
Right. And
Yeah,
and not having that assurance is a problem. And the way that the OGL worked for all of its flaws, the way that the function the OGL actually fulfilled that this Creative Commons thing, in my opinion, absolutely doesn't. Because here's the thing: one of two things is true. Either it works like you said, in which case I could decide that I was going to create a whole new set of systems that were bolted onto the SRD, and put none of that into the Creative Commons. So I hold the copyright on all those systems. Therefore, no one else can take those and iteratively design off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which defeats the purpose of why the OGL was created in the first place. Because the whole point of the OGL was that you would have a pool of content that you as a creator could then refine and say, oh, I like this piece and that piece, and
Sure.
so on and so forth. So I personally don't have any interest in it, and I think it's a bad idea. I just think it's a colossally bad idea. I'm happy to be wrong about that. If somebody's listening to this podcast and want to hit me up on Blue Sky and be like, no, here's why you're stupid. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. I'm willing to be stupid.
No, fair enough.
Break it down for me. But from where it looks right now, it feels like at best, you're just saying all this shit's mine and I'm just going to give lip service to the SRD. Mm-hmm. And at worst, you're risking putting everything in your book into the Creative Commons because the legal language just isn't clear.
That's totally fair. Yeah, I'd have to talk to a lawyer because, like I said, I'm not sure. I do know that there were some discussions during the OGL scandal specifically that said, hey, technically the hard and fast how the math works rules can't be copywritten regardless.
Sure. I mean, well,
but
here's the real right. It gets weird and muddy, and here's the real thing about it. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Doesn't matter what the law says. It matters what you can prove in court.
Yep.
And if Wizards of the Coast got a wild hair, there's not any 10 companies in this industry they can't shut down. You know,
yeah. No, for sure.
They can just throw money at it until you go bankrupt. So, do I think that there's a possibility? Do I think there's a likelihood that Wizards of the Coast is going to start using this as a gotcha to start like suing small publishers? Probably not. Seems kind of silly to do that.
Sure. I think it was to get around the fact that they owned the OGL. And there were other ways, right? They could have put the OGL in a trust and things like that. There were options, for sure. But
they blowtorched a whole bunch of goodwill when they tried to pull in the first place.
Oh yeah, like and it's still been going.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to turn this whole thing.
Sure.
This whole wonderful thing. We could talk for a whole episode about bitching about Hasbro's business decisions.
You've come to my anti-capitalist podcast. You've come to my anti-capitalist podcast to talk about Wizards of the Coast. You get ready for some bitching.
Yeah, no joke. But yeah, having said that, I just think that I guess to circle it back around, I think that it makes more sense to just let 5e sit where 5e is sitting. Mm-hmm. I will say that when the whole OGL debacle went down, the brilliant mind of Eddie Webb patched the Onyx 20 system, which is Onyx Path's sort of proprietary D20 based system, which is what Realms of Pugmire runs on.
Oh, okay.
And it is beautiful. It's elegant. We did a lot of. I worked with him a little bit on it to help bring terminology to a place where it makes a beautiful bridge between D&D and StoryPath.
Okay.
So it's like all the ability scores have the same. They're called attributes, and they have the same names as attributes from StoryPath. Nice. So it's really kind of a nice like gateway drug.
I was going to say, or you guys drop a conversion guide.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that would be an option. So I would expect, and again, I mean, I am very hesitant to ever say anything like for, I don't speak on Onyx Path's behalf.
Sure. No, 100%. I understand.
But my guess would be, I would love. I will say this much: I would love to see a Scarlands version under Onyx 20 because I do think it's a really good rule set. But all that being said, right now, my focus and my understanding is Onyx Path's focus is on pushing this Savage Worlds license and just trying to get it out there and get people to see it.
Yeah. And
get people to check it out. Maybe people who've never played. Ideally, I would love, people who are into Savage Worlds who've never touched Scarred Lands to come check it out because it's a really cool, unique, fun setting with really cool, unique, playable character options. And I would like people who are longtime fans of the setting to come over and check out the Savage World system. It doesn't bite. It's a good system. And, and again, I can't stress enough, once you get your toes wet in Savage Worlds, you will find all sorts of cool shit. Deadlands is an amazing game, the Savage Rifts, it takes, again, I got to be a little careful about how I phrase this. It takes one of the best settings ever created for role-playing games and puts it through a much more playable rule set than, say, Palladium Rifts might be.
We understand on this side. This whole, let me tell you, actually played in one of your games. I got a friend in my werewolf game right now. He played in your technocracy game, and me and him just occasionally will go, you know what system we really hate? GURPS. And it just turns into a GURPS bitch fest sometimes. But he also loves Thaco, so like no one's perfect.
Sure, yeah, everybody's got their flaws. I mean, while I say that, I'm waiting for my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness reissue to come that I ordered on Kickstarter, and I have a stack of Nightbane books next to me. So I mean, I love the material that Palladium puts out. I like the setting material way more than system material.
I get it. I used to play a lot of Exalted Second Edition.
also before my time.
Oh man, love Exalted Second Edition. Probably the most years of gaming I've ever done in a system that I'm like, that's okay. But I really love the setting.
I played it back in the day, but I didn't. I did not work on any Exalted. I still have yet to work on an Exalted book outside of Layout.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
But yeah, so with that, I was wondering. So this has been kind of a thought I've been having, and I've touched on it in other places. But I find it interesting how some games are designed to be more VTT friendly than others, and some are very much designed to be very friendly at the table with other people. So like I would say, a Vampire Masquerade 5th Edition is very intentionally designed with a VTT in mind. And I would say that like an Alien RPG, or really most anything pumped out by Free League, is very much designed for the table, and that VTTs are kind of a secondary or even tertiary sort of consideration. How do you feel Savage Worlds does in that realm, given the scale of VTTs versus how many people might be still playing in person?
So Savage Worlds has an entire set of subsystems that are sort of based around the use of minis and inches on the tabletop, effectively, which makes it real easy to drop into a grid. You know what I mean? All of your distances are listed in inches. And then the inches, I believe it's 1 inch converts to 2 yards in the world. So with that little bit of math, it's just seamless integration into VTT. And they have, I mainly use Roll20 for VTT, partially because I don't want to spend $400 on a third-party VTT platform that's going to go bankrupt in 6 months. Again, not to sound like a cynic, but that's, if you look at the market, so it's either going to go bankrupt in 6 months or get bought by Roll20 in 6 months. So I use Roll20 primarily, and the Roll20 Savage Worlds modules are great. The base rule set's awesome. It's dirt simple to start up a game. And yeah, all those measurements exist. They're there. They're listed right in the books. So if you want to drop a VTT in, totally cool. But the other thing that's very cool about it, because everything is sort of simplistic and modular, is they also have like optional, there's sidebars all over the place in the rules section about like, options for making your game run smoother. And one of them, like, for example, all your powers will have a burst template, right? There'll be a small, medium, or large template, or a cone template, or a stream template. And those are like literally have measurements for like when you lay it on the table, it's this many squares, right? But there's a sidebar in there that says if you're not using tabletop measurements, this template will get this many characters, this template will get this many characters, this template will get this many characters. So you can just, theater of the mind it and be like, oh, well, 9 of you got hit.
Good, yeah, because let me tell you, growing up, I jumped into 3.5 right after high school, and when they talk about all the miniature stuff, I'm like, well, I can't afford that, and so I got real good at theater of the mind as a consequence.
Bit of a sidebar story, but when D&D 5th edition had been out for just a couple of years, I was still doing a lot of DM's Guild content creation. And I had a regular group. We met every Tuesday and we played D&D. And a lot of times I would play test little things I was popping on the guild or whatever in that group. But the overarching game was a Planescape game. And we eventually got up to like level 18. So what do you do if you're level 18 in the Planescape game? You fight like 5 fucking gods at once. So there's a night we set up, and it's like they're fighting, I think it was Tiamat, Vecna, Strahd, and Orcus at the same time. And I was like, well, we're going to break out a map and some minis for this, because it's a lot to keep track of. And I saw this group that had just been the most slapsticky, fucking shooting each other in the ass with bows, just pack of jokers when we were doing Theater of the Mind, just clamp in and become a well-oiled, like, strategic machine when I rolled those minis out. And I was like, oh shit, maybe we should start doing this more. Because that was literally like the first time I'd ever used minis for a game. You know what I mean? Sometimes I would, if I'm doing Theater of the Mind and like it's really hard, my big trick was, all right, I'll throw down a piece of paper, I'll draw a couple squares on it, and I'll grab dice. And I'll be like, that's you, that's them, that's this. That's close I ever used to get.
That's kind of that was me for a while. I did do grid for a while. I bounced away from it because I had a friend who was my roommate at the time, and he was one of my players, and he played nothing but tactical games and was basically a certified genius. Like, he double majored in computer science, computer engineering, like interned with the CIA, and then like got his high-paying tech job that paid off his student loans in like a year and a half out of college, bought his own house, like just crazy smart. And so when the miniatures came out, he's like, we're doing this, and this. I'm like, fuck, man, I cannot keep up. I can't do it. I'm too fucking dumb. Like,
yeah, it can be a lot. It can be a lot. And my biggest, like, again, I feel like an old man shouting at a cloud, but my biggest complaint about VTT, or about stepping away from Theater of the Mind, is I think it does unfairly focus events on combat. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's not that you can't have good social stuff with a map, but oftentimes you don't. Oftentimes it just steers into, hey, we got this map here, guess we should do some tactical fighting. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, all the time. I get it. Like that is it, and that's why there's good advice of saying like, hey, Theater of the Mind for all social encounters. Like, if it's going to be a big fight, then sure, comes out the map. But if it's like a fleeing encounter and an exploration thing, they're expected to draw their own maps and things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing that I really enjoy about Savage Worlds is they have quick encounter rules. So, like, if you want to do, so you can kind of mix and match, right? Like, let's say I like random encounters because I think random encounters help the world feel lived in. But their method of random encounters isn't just, oh, you roll on a table and then you're fighting this thing. You draw a card, and depending on the suit, will determine like what kind of encounter you're going to have. So it could be a friendly encounter, it could be an enemy encounter, it could be an obstacle, or it could be what's the fourth one? A treasure. And then you have other tables that you would go and check. Then within that, what type of encounter it becomes. So then you can have like a fully fleshed out encounter that runs normally with all your rolls and your initiative and so on and so forth. Or you can use what they call a quick encounter, which is basically you boil that encounter then down to, you have your narrative, you talk about what's happening, and then you boil it down as a group. You decide what's the one die roll that's going to solve this encounter, and then you get the chance to roll your dice and then button it up. And there's mechanics in place in Savage Worlds, so very rarely, if you have one roll, is it ever just that you're stuck with one roll, because you have bennies you can spend to re-roll failed dice and stuff. So I think that's really cool. I don't know if I'd be as big of a fan of it if you didn't have some way of like getting out of a bad roll on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I've always run a house rule for most kind of dice pool games, even where everyone gets a free mulligan. Like once per
Yep.
session, you can just re-roll a roll that's like, hey, I had 10 dice and I botched this on a diff 4 roll. Like, can I mulligan that?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, yes, you can. Or they save it for like their life-saving rage rolls, right? Because they failed it and they don't want their character to die. And then the rule is like, you get an extra XP if you don't spend your mulligan chip, which is, accepting like a botch and things like that versus, weighing the botch versus, like getting experience and things like that. So, but no, I think that those mechanics are really good because yeah, sometimes if the roll makes no goddamn sense as to why you'd fail it, right? It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels bad.
Sure. And in fairness too, like there is they lean heavily on that's another thing that StoryPath from NX Path leans on too, which is if it doesn't make sense to roll the dice, just adjudicate the situation. That's another thing that Savage Worlds leans on. If you're fighting people that you're this like veteran. I like to. I'll bring up a Deadlands reference because it's very simple. You're a veteran gunslinger who's fighting a bunch of just like townspeople that are armed with like clubs. You probably don't even have to roll. You just you mow down the townspeople.
As a sidebar, funny story. Years ago, I ran a werewolf game where they got to jump into their ancestors' lives, and they were at different ranks to give them the experience of different ranks throughout the game. And
Okay.
they jumped into the Dark Ages. They were elders, and they ended up bumping into like a Nexus crawler and like 6 scrags. They crushed the Nexus crawler like nothing. No ifs, ands, or buts. Crushed 5 of the scrags. And then one scrag they just kept whiffing on, and he dropped like 4 of them. And they're like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is this? Like, so the running joke
Yeah.
is just like, I'll take on a Nexus crawler. Fucking scrags. You gotta.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and I don't want to alienate and offend like a third of the role playing game community, but whenever people start breaking out like their math charts and their probabilities about like how dice are supposed to act, I'm like, have you ever sat at a table? Because that's not how dice work. Like, you can show me all the mathematics in the universe, but I've played enough tabletop to know that dice work how dice decide to work. Yeah.
Look, like I know people who have degrees in mathematics, and they are some of the most superstitious dice rollers on the face of God's green earth. Like, I get it.
It's so wild. And so when I'm designing stuff, I really do lean a lot more on vibes than I do on like charts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, does
for
that
sure.
feel like it's gonna roll right? Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah,
And then I play test and that usually pans out. Once in a while my instincts are off. But.
yeah. No, because I know the math when I've done play testing with like the Wrecking Crew and things like that for upcoming games, and they ask for feedback. I'm like, I will do some of the math because some of the math is just like you vibes a little too close to the sun, my guy, and
Sure.
and it's
Sure.
like, and then it usually comes out in playtest exactly how I thought to some degree because it's just like, oh, this mechanic explodes, and you gave them this extra explosion thing here, and all right, for this very specific narrow, like the average person will not run into this problem. But if you ran into one person who min maxes, they are going to break your goddamn game. Like there's nothing like you shouldn't design for just min maxers, obviously. But when it's so glaring that me, a non min maxer, can see it, it's
Yeah.
time
You
to
want
go
to
back to
avoid
the
anything that's like obviously the best choice or obviously the worst choice.
yeah,
If you can keep everything away from those two extremes, I think you're in good shape. Because
yeah,
I do find that people will enjoy playing a character who they know is not optimal.
yes,
You know, But and people will absolutely enjoy playing optimized character. There are
Yeah.
people in both of those camps, for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. But not optimal is a far cry from bad.
Mhm.
But no,
Exactly.
100%. So no, this sounds really interesting. I am excited to see where this goes when I eventually play, Savage Worlds on my giant collection of RPGs that I still have to get through. Uh, Too many
Well,
books, not enough time.
not to throw you in hot seats in front of the whole internet, but I know of at least one actual play of the Spirogos trilogy that's getting ready to cook. And I would love to make introductions if you'd be interested in sitting in as a player.
Uh,
Um,
eh, I like to. I just don't want the internet to know what I look like.
oh well, that's easy. That's easy
That's
to
fair
get
enough.
around. That
All
I'm a
right.
big fan of audio. I do not believe, and this shows on the Twitch channels that I run, and some people are down with it. Some people think it's a problem, and those people are free to watch other Twitch channels. I
Sure.
do not believe that anyone should feel pressured to put their face on the internet.
Uh huh.
So we have always had a policy
Okay.
on any channel that I run that if you want your character picture up, throw that up. If you want just some art from the book, we'll throw that up. Nobody has to have their face on
Oh.
online for
Okay.
actual
Okay.
plays.
Well,
Um,
there'd be a strong maybe because unfortunately I am also super busy.
Time is also a thing, of course.
Time, like it's the time to dedicate to all the games I want to play, man. Like when I retire, I'll just have a library and it's like, come to my home, children. See the mystical worlds of Dungeon Crawl Classics, the One Ring RPG. Play some Scarred Lands.
Precisely.
But no,
Precisely. But yeah,
do you have any closing thoughts that you want to make
uh,
sure folks walk away with?
just to remind everybody, right now, Gauntlet of Spirogos for Savage Worlds is up on Drive Thru RPG. It's if you look for Gauntlet of Spirogos, it should come up. The version you're going to want is one that says
I'll drop a link in the description.
beautiful. I appreciate it. By the time this airs, I think Dagger either will be out or will about to be out. Dagger of Spirogos in advanced PDF. Um,
Perfect.
and then we have 4 of our creature profiles are out already. There are 4 more that I just sent off to approvals, so those should start dropping next month. And I should have some news about the player's guide probably at Onyx PathCon, and that is going to be running from June 6th through 8th. So
Awesome.
stop out to the Onyx Path Twitch during that time. Come ask us some questions about all our various games we got cooking, and I will have some news about Scarred Lands there as well.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Travis. I really appreciate it. I've been. Is there any place you want to be found on the internet?
Blue Sky, TikTok. I'm on Facebook, but all I do there anymore is bitch about politics.
Hey, I know. I've liked them with the Facebook page because I need the chuds to fucking leave. Uh,
Yeah. It's been an interesting. I mean, we live in interesting times for better or worse, but it's been an interesting couple days because I live in Illinois, as I mentioned, and our governor just made a lot of people real mad by saying a lot of things that a lot of people really needed to hear in a speech recently. Um, and so naturally they're mad about it because the Republicans are mad because he's calling them out on their crap. The Democrats are mad because he's calling them out on their crap. It's been an interesting couple of days.
oh yeah. But I've been Keegan. This is a bunch of gamers. You can find us on Facebook, Blue Sky, Podbean, YouTube, a couple other spots as well where you can find podcasts. But you will never find me on Twitter. I found it a cesspool, and I was proven right. Bye.